We're on. Okay. You know, just the idea to consider how many oxymoronic things there are available. To marshal these into one tape would be totally impossible, so I've decided to do a number of them, and the word oxymoron is apparently most descriptive of a lot of things that tobacco industry and the people that feed off of the industry. There are people who make a lot of money. As I say, there's that nut guy who gets $27 million a year for doing nothing. Maybe a financier back in 1996, 95, 94, who knows. So as I have looked upon some of the truly oxymoronic thoughts of my own misgivings, so to speak, which are oxymoronic thoughts, and misgivings of what's called the Master Settlement Agreement, which, as you probably would guess, I think is a bit of a hoax that was completely devised by attorneys general of the United States, government officials, and lawyers. I mean, you don't get these people, and also the health advocates. You don't get these people together in one room without coming up with some kind of diverse or adverse and diverse kind of like having a seizure all at once. Your goal is to corrupt as much as you can. I can't think of any elected official who has anything less to do than to devise means of corruption. And that is the system we've lived in always, especially the United States and especially the South, which has always sought to rise again. So, however Mr. Moore intended this, it certainly has reached the criteria of adverse consequences. If he actually indeed, or any of the people here in the delightful state of Mississippi, or in the state of Minnesota, or actually Minnesota was more erudite in its approach to this, but nevertheless was part of it, and let's just say Alabama, or I pick up an eastern state, Idaho. No, that's a western Idaho, whatever, doesn't really matter. The main point is they bought this Master Settlement Agreement. They sold it. Without any consultation with even some of the governors before they had a means of developing it. And the attorneys general of each state had this all up, and most of it had to do with lawsuits that were packaged, put together, and then they came up with a solution. Nobody really cared what the solution was, as long as there was money. Okay. Thinking in the long list of ideas, I believe you're right. Whatever you're talking about over there, um, I'm very comfortable with. The oxymoronic clause that's most apparent in the Master Settlement Agreement is it reads something like this: if if your cigarette sales um, are reduced at a certain level, and you have to make an adjustment for the tobacco industry. If they're reduced, then your payments in any state format would be reduced accordingly. So the states are incentivized to get the best for their money, get the most money they can. And therefore, when I talk about taxes, that's a diabolical thing if the state is going to tax. Although, when the states don't even really have an interest in spending any money or earmarking it for anything, because in the Master Settlement Agreement, that was one of the things that Mike Moore and the boys, and certainly Dickie Scruggs, decided, well, if we can actually give the states this money and they don't have anything to do but to deal with it, and there's no earmarking and there's no designation of how to spend it, they're going to be very happy to sign it, and they did. And I think that's the crux of it. I read an article, a letter by the governor of Alabama at the time when he was about to sign. And he said, "What is it that you're taking away from me, Mr. Attorney General? You're taking away from me the authority to sign for a bill, a thing that's going to have the state of Mississippi getting more money than I'm getting? Oh, man, that's not right. And besides, I haven't filled in the corruption forms. I've got to have those." And so he railed on this before he ever signed off on anything. And the point is that there were individual states that had some degree of interest in having some control, but actually the truth of it is, in the end, all the states just capitulated and said, "Give me the money." So if you read the Master Settlement Agreement, which is written, it's a brilliant piece of trash, because they have it all covered. Something goes to some point, something goes to another point, and they have got it all. It's like getting something that a rhesus monkey has generated, and then figured out in some kind of computerized program. I mean, it takes a rhesus monkey to decipher it. Maybe a team of them, which they're graduates of some kind of economics school or accounting school. And so the oxymoron here is, if your cigarette sales, and this appears in the Master Settlement Agreement, which is totally visible to everyone, if your cigarette sales are reduced, and your payments, which amount to total for the next, well, they have since 2000, $8 billion to the states. So that would be about $116 billion that's already been paid out. And then that doesn't count for the lawyers. That doesn't count for the little boys and girls over in Legacy, which had some money at one time. I don't know if they spent it all. They had $1.5 billion. And then there you go. I don't know if they spent it. I don't know if it's gone, but they're still trekking along. So what we're really looking at is oxymoron number 2. the concept itself, it's meant to encourage and not discourage, encourage uh, that the levels in 1997 where they were gauging, oh, if you get this market share, you got this amount, and the states basically are condoning the fact that we can't raise taxes, or if we do, it might harm our position. This is not actually true now because they've been raising taxes, but they certainly haven't been spending any money in the way that you would imagine was indicated in the Master Settlement Agreement, and nobody ever cared. Nobody ever cared. Richard Denard didn't care. The people who were putting that together were the likes of Richard Denard. Matt Myers didn't care. He was putting this together. The people who were so adamant about these children smoking. Look, children are poor. I pointed it out. Look, if you want to, you write something in there that's going to make some sense to those kids. But, basically you're dealing with stupid and poor. And in the oxymoron that deals with encouraging the idea of smoking, it does not escape logic to believe that if you're saying your sales fall below a certain point, then you're in trouble, and the money that you're supposed to receive every year, which is millions and millions of dollars for 25 years, is not going to be there. Well, obviously, the states are in business with the tobacco companies. Now, why is that? Why is that wrong? I would like to point out that there are other countries that are in business with the tobacco companies. For example, China. Now, we think of China as being a wonderful place where we can buy cheap goods. Well, that's good, and yet at the same time, I don't think it's the model of our ethos, how we have practiced our ethnocentric ways of living. We are different, and maybe it is an odds with our moral scope, whichever that might be. I doubt that we have any now that the Master Settlement has sort of eliminated everything that's possible in that area. But the states in business with selling tobacco, given equality, and if they fall beyond the scope of their numbering, which is wild and esoteric in many ways, because it's all figured out. Gee, you got these so many thousands, so many millions, so many billions of tobacco sticks that you're going to sell, and if you fall below that number, pity, you lose your a percentage of the money that we're sending you in. This is all hokey stuff, and obviously it's not going to be anything but a nuisance for many people. But that's what I'm pointing out as oxymoronic. And if indeed the whole purpose of tobacco is to control somehow the issue and the problem that it creates for this society, this particular concept is beyond any kind of belief, in my opinion. A very good opinion about what you did in the Master Settlement Agreement, which has now gone on 12 years, and you haven't done a thing but buy more golf carts and more pleasure vehicles for the local sheriffs and whatever it suits you. And this is the purpose of tobacco. I knew it at the time, and if I'd had a say, I would have not let this happen. But of course, I didn't have a say. On the other hand, I'm here to irritate three parts of this. One, the states. Two, the lawyers, for sure. And three, the people who irritate me, which are the health advocates, which are not even there anymore. They've disappeared by the same logic. If they say something that's detrimental or has any sense of vitriol in it, which is another oxymoronic thought, then they find themselves in court, or they're supposed to be very nice to the tobacco industry. Now, how can you make a deal like that? After all, at one time, there were people who at least pretended to be anti-tobacco and activists. I'm not saying that there are not some out there. There probably are. I don't think that Patrick Reynolds or Richard Daynard, I mean, my God, he's moved on to fat people now, and any people will open their mouths against the tobacco industry because it's just not in their interest. Not Stanton Glantz, who was, he's made enough money now to retire on his coronary benefits, whatever he's got, and all the other people. Now, this is no longer an idealistic issue. This certainly has gone in the past. We'll never be back. But where we are with this oxymoronic idea, the clause of the Master Settlement Agreement is that if you actually do this, if you reduce the amount of sales and your money coming in from the people out there who produce the master settlement funds, which are actually the Attorney General, as I understand it, through an escrow account that has an independent accounting service. I don't know whether that really works. Maybe it's Arthur Anderson revamped. I don't know. But for better or worse, the number of cigarettes you sell, the better profit, the more profit, and the more poor people that suffer, the more money you're having to inject into taking care of them, because I don't think you're going to kill them outright, but hopefully the idea is they just die, and you don't have to hit them over the head with a mallet, and then you can bury them cheaply in paupers' field or whatever, because every state is particularly attuned to that kind of thing. So the states get more money, and they dip all from the very beginning. They were in the cookie jar because of the economics of it all. The cookie jar was the Master Settlement Agreement money, and they just dipped into it and created what was necessary. So there's no doubt in my mind that this particular concept is perverse. It's a perverse incentive, and it's definitely going to go down as the sales dependent upon of the tobacco sales revenue of any year in any given year, and they look at it and they say, whoops, our sales went down, so as a result of that, we have to worry about what we're going to pay you, and you have to worry about what we're going to pay you because we're going to reduce it. Well, by reduction, that means you get less money. It's perverse. It's in a United States agreement called the Master Settlement Agreement that states it is obvious to everyone that if you're going to look at our money, you're going to be losing if you don't come up and allow us to do what we want to. That's exactly what they're doing. Don't talk to me about what they got out of the settlement. They got money, that's it. And states since 2000 have, and this began around, certainly the first big payments were in 2000. The non-settling states, 2000, $8 billion a year. It's not a small amount of money. And divvied up among 46 states, or however that works with the non-settling, the ones who had already sued, Florida, Texas, and Mississippi. leading me to believe, as this is not exactly a concept which I would find to be acceptable under any circumstances, and nor would you if you thought about it. But on the other hand, when you cooperate with the Nazis, you're going to probably be drinking Nazi Coke, product placement there. I don't know if there was any reason for doing this particular oxymoronic tape, but other than to say that the perverse incentive is just as bad as the idea of not taxing the people out there, and not raising prices, not keeping keeping people in a position where they can fight off addiction. And this was never the purpose. This was never the purpose. I think that everyone out there who's ever thought about controlling tobacco merely caved in after the controls were off, so to speak. The lawyers came in, the attorneys general came in, and they took over, even from the governors. Ergo, the Mississippi case started a big windfall for a lot of people, but I don't think it's anything but a corruption that goes right into the heart of the Master Settlement Agreement, which is, by the way, protected and conveniently held intact by the attorneys general, who over the years fold over and turn over. And it's sort of like having a government, a column, a different column, like the fifth column of government, because there's money there, lots of it. It just keeps growing. And what's better for the attorneys general is, they make the laws, they make the rules, and they make the incredible calls. So the MSA, basically the Master Settlement Agreement, states basically it's profitable, so therefore we'll win, and they'll keep it, because I don't think there's anybody out there strong enough, powerful enough to take this on. And that's reality. Challenges? Who wants to challenge it? Everybody's fat and pink and happy. There's no challenger. So part of the oxymoronic clause here is, if you're gonna keep up with us, you want your money, you're going to have to keep the sales going, which means you have to program your lives in the legislature not to tax, or to keep the profits going, not to be harassing anybody. It is not a solution to controlling tobacco, and obviously people who have proclaimed in the past that they were controlling tobacco no longer are there. Maybe I'm the last, I don't know, but I was never interested in that. I thought it would just happen. On the other hand, there are a few others that have some interesting particles to it. Mute, impractical particles. Molecules in many ways that don't just bounce around out there, your ideas. We must say, for example, once, and this is another oxymoronic thought, did you know that the MSA, the Master Settlement Agreement, prohibits the vilification or personal attack against the tobacco industry? And this was tried out very early in 2000. Let me point out that that is the most oxymoronic thought. Maybe that's why these people who are embedded in their roles as the role models are simply retarded in their role models, because they actually would be under a cloud, so to speak, of inspection by the tobacco industry, which says you can't vilify us. You can't call attention to us in a derogatory way. Whoa, I'm not being paid there. I'm not getting anything from that. So hold on, because this concept is ridiculous. It's oxymoronic too. Guess what? I think I'm going to maintain it for what it is and let the vitriol rule and the personal attacks. I've already been, to some extent, found out in the early part of this in some kind of kids campaign that was well funded. Stupid. I don't believe that it's any more realistic than having a sip of Nazi Coke. On the other hand, that oxymoronic detailing of this is just another fabric of the concept of how stupid this whole thing is. Oh, and you can call this stupid too, but the oxymoronic clause, Master Settlement says, if you decrease your sales, you're going to get less money from the big boys in tobacco. This is a lot of different ways of saying we own you. And in this sense, it means that we're doing business with you. That's what they're doing. They're in business with the tobacco companies. Awesome. I love it.